And it's beautiful to not have to try or not feel like you're doing a lot of extra work because it's still happening in the background, even if we don't see it.
Welcome to the Human Design Projectors Society podcast. I'm your host, Zette Harbour. Join me as we explore and dive deeply into the brilliance, the beauty, and the power of what it is to be a projector. Welcome, Yesica. Thank you for being a part of the Human Design Projector Society podcast, for coming here and partnering with me to explore your design and share your insights and observations of your life as a projector with all of the unique elements that are part of your design. Welcome, and would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, first of all, thank you, Seth, for creating this safe space for us projectors. I feel like projectors are not heard enough, and it's good to have communities like this that come together, that we're able to come and talk about these things, and anyone can hear it now because we're all at different parts of the world, and it's hard to find that community, but so easy to stay connected now that we have podcasts. But so I discovered human design, I want to say, to a year and a half ago. I never really even heard of such a thing. But when it came around, I didn't really pay attention to it until this year. And I just kind of started exploring more and reading more on it. And when I discovered it was projector, it almost felt like so many questions have been answered for me in terms of why I have been the way I was. And a lot of things why they don't work out the way I expect them to, right? So coming to find out, I had always been operating from my not self, and then just exploring human design and finding so many answers to the questions I had, or why I wasn't fitting in and why I felt the way I did. I always felt like I'm not a part of my family, like I'm not a part of this world, I don't have friends, or no one can understand me. So finding human design really helped me and opened a lot of doors of exploration. And when I'm talking about exploration and finding out, it's just a lot now. I'm like, oh my God, which way do I go? Because there's a lot of things in human design. And it's just an exploration. That's what it is. And I'm finding more about myself and recognizing things in me that I didn't know I had, or I was just going through life thinking, oh, this is who I am and everyone's the same way, or I'm not that way and something's wrong with me.
100%. 100%. My gosh, I think every projector listening will be able to relate to everything you said on some level, in some way. That sense of not being, let's call it, normal.
Yeah, I think that's the feeling. But again, it's now I'm what is normal now? You know?
Exactly. And that is, like you shared, it's the beautiful part of the human design discovery of human design, is suddenly realizing that you're not here to be like everybody else, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm. And and it's also almost like magic happening because you see everything playing out. And so I went and looked at my siblings' charts and just figure out who they were, and realizing that all this time I had been surrounded by energy centers. And that's why I wasn't feeling myself, because I was enveloped in all of their energy. And so I have been operating from that structure that I was born into.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And how lovely to have this perspective that you have now, right? Especially with your profile of the 1-3, being able to gather all these details and create some sort of a more secure foundation from which you can engage with and perceive and understand the world around you, right? As well as yourself.
Yes. And for some time, I didn't understand why I didn't feel in my body, why I didn't feel safe. And I think I had always been looking for that, but I didn't understand why. I just felt like something's wrong with me. I even thought I'm just a child still. Why I don't feel safe anywhere. But then finding out my foundation, I have to have a solid foundation for me to even feel safe and start the work. I understood okay, so there's really nothing wrong. I just need to feel safe in my body and start that work.
Yeah, beautifully said. I'm excited to start opening up the various aspects of your design. Before we get into that, I do like to just share my chart briefly to give the viewer and also the guest just kind of a sense of here's the lenses through which I am seeing and inviting you to explore your chart with me. I'm also a 3/6 profile, which means I am all about trial and error. So I am here to experiment. And my motivation is innocence. You can see down here on the lower right. And so that's been the beauty of creating this Human Design Projector Society and podcast, is that for me, it is a purely innocent and really just joyful and filled with recognition of the beauty of the projector design and destiny, and to offer this as a way for us to all discover together what works and what doesn't. And so with that, I'm going to switch back to your chart. And so I think you've started to really share beautifully with us, like the sense of not being, let's say, a generator, because we know that almost 70% of people right now are generators. So we're surrounded by that sacral energy and that very busy generator-ness. And
Yes.
so as a projector, have you had any experience or insights into that aura that they talk about, all of us projectors having, that very focused and absorbing, and I've even heard the word probing used to describe the projector aura?
I have. It's interesting because, I mean, not knowing I was a projector, I had been experiencing some of those moments, right? But also, like, that generator energy feels so good to be around. So I've always felt I have this energy, like we all just have to go. And I never really stopped and think, oh, we're different. Until recently, when I discovered human design, is when I started observing the projector side of me and how my aura was very penetrating. And it's just like it's focused and only one person at a time. And I can see that even playing out at work as well. For example, at work, I was always, I want to direct people, but I can only do one person at a time. Otherwise, I feel overwhelmed. And it's almost like anxiety that I will feel. But to me, it was always like something's wrong with me, not that it's who I am. And I'm a projector and I need to focus on one person. Otherwise, I do feel overwhelmed. And so now, the way it's come up, I respect that more now and I see it play out more. So, for example, like when I go out or even at work, I don't initiate things. I try to kind of stay in the background because even though I'm in the background, I'm still being observed, right? And like my aura is still like speaking and doing the work for me. And I do see it. Sometimes I'll get invited, or sometimes they recognize me and they see me, and then sometimes they don't. But it's okay because I feel like it's all the mechanics and all the energies are working the way they should. And if it's not for me, it's just not going to be for me, right? But I do see how being a projector and being focused only on one, now that I understand that, has helped me because then I don't feel so isolated or bad about not speaking up or not. Because I always feel like I want to talk and I want to share, but then it goes unnoticed. And it happened to me a lot. But now I'm like, okay, after finding out I'm a projector, there's boundaries to that. And it's beautiful to not have to try or not feel like you're doing a lot of extra work because it's still happening in the background, even if we don't see it.
Yeah, beautiful explanation of that, or sharing of that. Thank you. I want to briefly pop over and notice that for you, your motivation is the first color, fear, and that is really an additional layer of that first line energy of getting to the detail, getting to the bottom of the details, right? Getting all the details, researching, investigating, creating that secure foundation, knowing what is absolutely essential for survival goes along with that motivation. And Ra has spoken pretty clearly that for us projectors and also for reflectors, the motivation is an incredibly powerful discerning tool. And so for generators, It's just know your strategy and authority. Respond and follow your authority, right? And for them, it's either an emotional authority or it's a sacral authority. And for us, first of all, there's 5 different authorities that projectors can have, as well as so many different intensities of openness or definition. And also this being recognized and invited, which we're going to step into now, the strategy. I don't know about you, but pretty much I feel like we projectors get invitations all the time. It's just how do we know what is correct or not correct? And that's where Ross says the motivation is an incredible discernment tool to say, is this supporting me in staying in alignment with that motivation? And so with that, I'd love to invite you to talk about your experience of waiting for the recognition and invitation. You really started to tap into that when you were talking about like hanging back and seeing who notices you, right? Tell us more about your experience of that waiting for recognition and invitation.
That's been rough, especially because I'm so used to, I mean, I've only been in my experiment for about 6 months now. It's getting tougher because then anxiety starts to like creep in and the mind starts to say, again, that fear. I feel like my mind is connected to the fear, right? Because then I start making up stories and then it's that fear that creeps in. And if you wait too long, my mind's telling me, right? What if you're waiting and never, and like the invitation never comes around? Or what if you just lose on time or lose on this opportunity? So it's the mind that starts kicking in. So I've been exploring waiting for the invitation more so now, but I'm still having issues. I do understand, for example, so my partner's another projector. He's a 1-3 as well. So that works out very good because he invites me and then I'll invite him. And we're both projectors, so we both understand each other. So in that sense, it's been easy to practice with him. But when I go out into the world, it's really hard. It's really hard because you see all the dynamics, all energies playing out together. And it just feels like you kind of lose yourself in all of that. So it's been really hard for me to just even wait when I go out and talk to friends. They could be speaking and I just stay quiet. And then something in me is, you have to talk. You have to talk. You have to be a part of them. You have to. And it's so hard to just wait. It's so hard to not speak or not say anything and just observe. So I've been playing around with just waiting. I do, but I always end up feeling like I didn't say what I needed to say. So it's been really hard.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think that we all projectors all resonate with that experience on from different points of view. The especially initially, the real pain of not being able or not feeling able or having permission to keep throwing ourselves out in front of people, because I certainly know that I spent decades doing that, trying to throw myself out in front of people in a way that would show them so they could recognize me and then
Mhm.
invite me and then appreciate me. So that initial pain of, but if I don't keep doing what I've always done, even though it never, almost never, right? There was maybe
Mhm.
once in a while where it would actually work and that would be like, yay, this is working. Whereas letting go of it completely is an incredible challenge, and going through those fears and emotions. And just noting in your design here, I mean, first of all, just that your definition, your splenic definition is mostly unconscious for you. And so that splenic authority, the way it speaks to you, that is already, I think the splenic is a very challenging authority, right? Because it's moves so quickly, it's instantaneous and it's there and it's gone. And having the layer added of it being mostly unconscious, that's got to make it even more challenging to be able to connect to that instantaneous intuitive wisdom. And you were mentioning about feeling like you're wanting to speak. And I can see here, again, this channel that connects your G to your throat, the 1333, the channel of the prodigal, a design of a witness, is again mostly unconscious. And so, how you're going to express your identity and direction and is that help people make sense of life and give it meaning, or help you make sense of life and give it meaning, like that's just going to emerge on its own in a cycle. And you don't have a conscious way of actually even directing that, right? So what you're describing, I feel like makes sense on a lot of levels with your design. You don't have any channels that are entirely conscious, right?
Right. And I'm trying to make a lot of things conscious, but then I can so easily get lost in my own, I was in my own head. For example, the splenic authority, I know it's there. I've experienced it, but it's not very conscious. I can go throughout my day and try to make it conscious, but it's harder. It's really hard. But when I do, I realize it after it happened. And then if I don't do what the splenic was saying, I'm like, oh, that was my splenic. And so I catch in little instances like that, but it's been really hard.
Yeah, that makes sense that it would be hard. And it also makes sense that you would catch it after the fact, right?
Mhm.
So that's when you notice something that was emerging unconsciously from you. And just looking at all the activations, first of all, you've got 6 activations in that channel. So there's a lot going on there with those different planetary influences, right? You've got the 28 in your unconscious sun. It has a lot to do with who you're here to be and the light you're here to shine, right? And then you have the unconscious 28 in your unconscious Venus. So it's your values, your sociology. Interestingly, that's a first line gate as well. So that is harmonic with your first line main profile. Those two together, that 28, I can see where that is very harmonic for you. And also because it's unconscious in your sun, in your Venus, right? It's something that you wouldn't notice until afterwards, right? It's think of the sunlight. We don't notice it before it happens. We notice it right after it.
Yes. Hmm.
Then you have your gate 38. It's in your unconscious Neptune and also your conscious Neptune. And so Neptune is just really veiled from us anyway, for the most part, right? It has to do with
Hmm.
and spirituality. So now you've got that gate having veiled energy from the planets, from your 2 aspects of your design, your unconscious and conscious. Then you've got it in your Uranus, which is your unusualness, and it can bring chaos or order, right? Again, these are very distant planets and not really necessarily something that maybe is going to pull this very quickly to mind. And you do have the 38 in your Mercury. So let's just pop open that gate there. That's gate 38 opposition, the gate of the fighter, the ability to preserve individual integrity through opposition to detrimental forces. So opposing detrimental forces as a way to preserve individual integrity. And with the line 1 energy and that personality Mercury of qualification, it says tempering opposition based on the circumstances. And so the exaltation is in Neptune. And because you have the activation in Neptune, you do have the exaltation for this gate, the psychic gift of knowing when and how to fight. So I would love to hear any insights or observations you might have about any of that.
I'm trying to think because I'm trying to remember. I do feel there's been plenty of times where I've experienced just even in school or work interactions or circumstances where I feel like someone is not being treated correctly or someone's being mean to someone else. I've always felt, yes, I can stand up for someone else when I see things not being, I guess, delivered correctly or someone's being taken advantage of. I do see that a lot in myself, and I do tend to stand more for fairness and equality. And when that's not being a thing around me, I observe it and I do stand up for other people or even myself. It's harder for me to stand up for myself, but it's easier for me to stand up for other people.
Yeah, beautifully described. And that kind of makes, so again, just to note that because it's Mercury, do you find that you are able to express or communicate this opposition to the detrimental forces?
Yes, I do, but more recently, so I found that because I know I'm a projector, I'm like, what am I going to be listened to if I'm not invited? So that creates a little bit of a pull back and forth now because I don't know if it's going to be taken the right way or if they're just going to ignore what I say.
Oh, yeah, that makes total sense. And it is a projected channel, and therefore it does require the recognition and invitation. I mean, as projectors, we only have projected channels, but even at this level, this sort of micro level, it's the recognition of is it correct for you to stubbornly, right,
Mhm.
oppose detrimental forces in trying to stand up for people. And so I wanted to pop into your gate 28. So it's your unconscious Venus. I was very curious about how much the core values or the social values might be showing up in your experience of that gate 28, preponderance of the great, the gate of the game player. The subtitle is The Transitoriness of Power and Influence. And it is a line one. Preparation is the name. It is detrimented, so an intuition for detail without the potential for application.
Hmm.
Yeah, I know. So when we really go, I know what each of those words mean, but what the heck does that sentence mean, right?
Yes.
Just, yeah, it speaks to the fact that it's in the splenic center, right? So it's intuitive. It has to do with something about details that may not actually have the potential for application, right?
Hmm.
You may have an intuition for detail. And I just, perhaps as you described, I don't know if anyone's going to listen, right?
Hmm.
That's without the potential for application, possibly, right?
Yes. I mean, I do see that often with my design or myself, in myself. I can, I will get like ideas. I'll get hits of intuitive hits of maybe, maybe things need to be done this way. But then without the proper invitation, I just feel like it's a dead end.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And the other place where you have the 28 is in your design sun, as we said. And so for that line three, it's called adventurism. And the subtitle for that is unfounded risk taking. So in your case, there's neither exaltation nor detriment. So there are times where you may feel an intuitive caution in risk taking in times of struggle. So perhaps you are more cautious about taking a risk if there's a struggle. Or you might have intuitive rationalizing of risk taking in times of struggle. So maybe when there are times of struggle, you're able to rationalize why it's okay to take that risk.
Yes, it's both. I can see how both have played out in my life. But if when I'm in, I guess, gate 28, when it activates, I rationalize a lot more. But when that's when I let the mind get in. But when I get the intuitive hit, it happens naturally. And if I'm in danger or I just like to take risk. I don't think about the consequence. I just do it. And
Mhm.
I think that's when that gets activated.
Yeah, I mean, you have that whole channel defined all the time, so that energy is consistent and reliable for you. But because it's unconscious, again, you may not notice it until it's already occurred, and you go,
Yeah.
oh, it just happened, right? And from what I understand, the detriment is most likely when we are not following our strategy and authority. So the rationalization, perhaps that you're describing, right? That's yours, as you said, the not self-mind, offering up all the conditioning as a way of making a mental decision. Does that
Yeah.
sound right? Yeah.
Yes.
Cool.
100%.
Such richness here. And just as an additional little note, because it is an individual channel, it's going to come in a pulse and it's going to be empowering, but then it's also going to not be there the next moment, right? It's going to be like it pulses and it's gone. And we can't ever predict a pulse and we can't ever explain a pulse of the knowing that comes. And again, for you, it's mainly unconscious. Okay, so I'd love to there's so many directions to go. But I feel like right now, what might be most useful is to talk about your personality sun, because this is a very strong part of who you are here to be. It is the light you are here to shine. So interestingly, right, what defines your authority down here is what you're here to rely on for making decisions in order to deliver this light that you are here to deliver. So for you, it's gate 41, decrease, the gate of contraction. The tagline or subtitle is the limitation of resources, which maximizes development of potential. It's such an interesting contradiction there, right? Limiting
Yes.
limited resource that maximize development of potential. For you, it's a first line called reasonableness, and it's about the appropriate delegation of responsibility. So the light you are here to bring has something to do with this maximizing development of potential in the presence of limited resources and delegating responsibility appropriately. And so the exaltation, which you may experience, is coolness, where the energy to release feelings is selective, or you may feel the hothead, the urge to release feelings. So what, if anything, do you feel you want to share with us about that?
Let's see. I'm trying to think. My mind's trying to think here.
It's a lot of words, so we can go through it a little more like step by step too. Okay, I think in general, let's start with the line one, the reasonableness, because that's the first line unique experience of the gate, right? Delegation of responsibility, right? Appropriate delegation. Who's responsible for what? Wondering if that rings a bell or if it resonates with you at all.
Yes, at work, about, let's see, maybe when I was in high school, I had a job to pay for school. And then in that job, my manager always felt like I would be a good fit for a manager. And I was always like, no, I don't see it in me. I'm not qualified. And I'm too young for that. I don't want the responsibility. Fast forward, I took the manager position and it worked out beautifully. I mean, I feel like I just knew, right, who needed to go where. And yeah, I mean, I did that for 7 years and it was great. At some point, though, I did feel some pushback because it felt like I knew more than I could deliver or that they could understand. It's always like that intuitive hit of knowing when to do what and where to delegate people to where.
Mm-hmm.
And then those decisions were like sometimes not understood.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, I love that. You just really captured it so beautifully. I mean, this really is the light you're here to shine, right? Who's the right person for the right job, right? Who's going to fulfill this responsibility the best way?
yes.
And then your splenic authority gives you that intuitive sense of, particularly because it is your unconscious sun, right? In partnership with your conscious sun, it's unfounded risk taking, adventurism. Interesting words there. I don't know if that resonates with you at all in relation to the work situation you've just described for us.
I Adventurism. Maybe the part where I just want to try things differently, not follow a set structure every day, but change things around, make it fun. That might be where this gate is showing up because I do like that. Even like when I'm working with teams, I like to change things up and not have people do the same thing over and over again, but delegate things differently on specific days. And what I found out is also some people don't like that. They just like things to be a certain way every day and do things over and over again. And that's boring to me. I don't like that.
That makes total sense. So for some, that's a risk they don't want to take, is an
Yes.
experience. And so for someone else, it may appear like unfounded risk taking because they look at you and go, why are you doing this? But that doesn't mean it's unfounded to you because you're following your intuitive wisdom, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. I love hearing that. So now we're going to look at your personality Earth, which for you is gate 31. It's called influence, the gate of influence. The subtitle is the law of friction, whether active or passive, that engenders transference and thus influence. Lots of words there. We'll unpack everything more slowly. It is first line. It's called manifestation. And it says that influence cannot exist in a vacuum. And you do have the exaltation of this particular gate and line, the unnatural expression of leadership. So again, there's a lot here to unpack. I'd love to just take it slowly. First, let's start with the detriment, which is that phrase, the unnatural expression of leadership. Does that bring anything up for you?
It does. But before we go on, I just have a question for you. What exactly is exaltation
Awesome.
in
Thanks
this
for asking that.
line?
Yes. So each gate has 6 lines possible, and each line has its own sort of theme or expression. It can be exalted, which doesn't mean it's better, but
Mhm.
often can be experienced as more expansive, perhaps. The detriment sounds like it's bad, but all it might mean is that it might feel a little constricting. That's
Mhm.
how I would describe those two effects. And because you have the 31 as the earth, you can see that symbol right here on the right-hand side, the little earth, the circle with the cross in it. That just is what determines that this particular portion of the line description is activated for you, right? And it's not in a defined channel, so it's an activation, not a full definition of a channel. And so it's quite likely that it would be very natural for you to have come up against in a fairly frequent manner this sense or experience of unnatural leadership or the unnatural
Mhm.
expression of leadership. So I think one of the
Yeah.
ways that I might connect it to something you've already said is when you were too young in your own mind and your manager said, no, you're great, let's do it.
Mhm.
Was it unnatural for you to be a leader at that time, according to how you felt, right?
Yes. I do feel like a lot of the times I'm put in positions of like leadership, and I always feel like, why? But then I find out, okay, no, this feels great. I can do this job. I do know where people belong, or at least understand them, because I always have that intuitive sense with people that I just know where they go or where they will do well or change things around. Um, I do find myself being or always being called like to step up into a leadership role, even though I feel like half of the time I'm not ready.
Wonderful. Gosh. And of course, for a first line, feeling like you're not ready is no, I don't want to do that, right? And then you've got your unconscious third line part of your profile. Let's give it a try, right?
Yeah. Let's do it. It's fun.
Being recognized and invited by others, right?
Yes.
They're saying, "Oh yeah, you can do this." So yeah, that's lovely. Thank you for sharing that. And so I would be curious to know that now moving forward, or even in this moment, now that you know it's kind of normal for people to expect you to be a leader, even when you don't feel like you're ready, would that change maybe how you feel about the next time someone invites you to step into leadership that you don't feel you're ready for?
Yes, I've actually recently, my boyfriend's just kind of been pushing me to start my own like business and start stepping away from like jobs and become my own leader almost. And I feel like, yeah, I'm not ready, but I'm approaching it from a different perspective now, where it's my head is telling me you're not ready, but my body and kind of like my heart now knows, hey, you are ready. You can do this, even though think it, you don't think you're ready, you know it. So it's a difference now.
Lovely. Oh, and congratulations.
Thank you. It's really hard too, because the mind gets in right away.
Absolutely, 100%. 100%. And this whole channel, the 2838, is called the channel of struggle, the design of stubbornness. One of the ways I've heard this channel described is you're born to know what's worth struggling for and what isn't, right? And so when you say your body or your heart knows what's worth struggling for, because it's hard to do this,
Yes,
you can trust that part of you, right?
I can more now than I did before.
Beautiful, absolutely. And I mean, you've got the third line in your profile, so you are going to learn through trial and error unconsciously. You're going to find out what doesn't work, right? So with that, let's just pop over here and talk about your profile. You are a 1-3, and that first line is called an investigator, and the third line is called the martyr. And so the investigator really wants to get to the foundation, like we've talked about. It wants to gather all those details, research, study, just set that secure foundation. And then unconsciously, your body's going to go, let's just see how it goes. Let's just test it out, because the martyr is really about living life through trial and error, being adaptable. And third lines even have a built-in resilience to help us, because I am also I have a 3-6, to help us deal with the fact that we're going to bump into things a lot and potentially even experience some crashes and things like that.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So fortunately, the third lines do have the built-in resilience that can help us. So one, know that no matter how many times you either fall down or run into a wall, you're made to do that. That is correct for you. And that there is this innate sort of tension in terms of expecting how life will be. Your conscious first line is like, no, we could put everything in order. We could get everything set up. We could let's just don't move until we know everything we need to know, right?
Yes.
And your third line's, let's go.
Yes, it happens every single time.
No
It's
surprise. It's not a surprise. And congratulations, you're profile correctly. Tell us more about it.
I think it's fun when you're aware of it, but when you're not aware of it, that's when it creates a lot of issues. But yes, so it's a complicated pairing, I would say. Very complicated, because my one is always wanting to be perfect, to explore, to investigate everything, to know everything very well, where I can master it. But then my third line is always, okay, you know that little bit enough of this, so let's go have some fun. Let's put it to action. Let's explore. And my one is always, but you still need to learn more, or you still need to dig more, right? So it's always that pull and push happening within me always. And because of that, it creates a lot of issues too, because then I'm not doing what I really want to do, because I have this like complicated interaction happening within me. And then when I finally want to just go and have fun, then if something doesn't work out, then my one's, I told you.
Of course, of course. Yes, that makes so much sense. So knowing more and living into your experiment more and more with your profile as a 1-3, what advice do you want to give yourself going into the future here?
I would say definitely just have a mentality where don't take it so serious. Explore. Just let it go. It's life. Have fun with it. But it's also hard in this world, in the world that we live now, because I don't feel like that's supportive of our design at all. It's like you need to pay the bills and things have to work a certain way to be here, to live. But I feel like the more we explore and we just find the fun in it, the more things kind of just flow.
Adventurism. That is the line 3 of your gate 28, which is your unconscious sun. And that is what brings you that third line part of your profile, right? So
Yeah.
that part of you, I feel like you described it beautifully. It's, let's just try it out. Let's have an adventure, right?
Yes. But even with the 1-3 line, it's more solitarily, like it's more exploring on your own versus bringing everyone else along. And that's been hard for me because I grew up in a house full of generators,
Mm.
and I crave that. I crave that energy. So it's been hard in that sense because I'm figuring out you need to go out and have fun on your own, or be self-sufficient.
That makes total sense based on some other elements of your design that you are. We're going to look over here again on the right, the definition. You have a split definition and it is bridged by gate 57. And there is a part of you that always is looking for that energy, that connective energy that
Yes.
connect these two parts of you, right? So the yearning for the others, right?
Mhm.
Makes total sense because that would potentially, the odds are pretty good that out of a larger group of people, and I'm sure you found people in your family who have the 57, have you or no?
Yes, my boyfriend has it.
Oh, oh, that's great. One day we'll have to have a conversation about that, about relationships. Yeah, so it makes sense that you feel that pull to that, right? Before we close, because we're getting close, I really want to hear, what do you observe or how do you understand being a splenic authority? And of course, we know that yours is unconsciously defined, so that adds a layer of uniqueness to it as well. But what can you tell us about I think it's described in the definitive book of human design as physiological changes that indicate some kind of message from the splenic center?
Yes, recently I've been trying to pay more attention to those intuitive hits. For me, it feels so sometimes I don't know that I feel sensation. I feel it's more of a knowing for me. And I think that's because it's unconscious. So I don't feel it really in my body, a sensation or something. Like I don't feel it in my body. I feel it more as part of me. Like I know it. And I don't know how to explain it because it's annoying. It's almost, I don't feel it anywhere in my body. Or maybe I'm not there yet where I'm like picking up my splenic and I know it's talking to me, but it's more of like annoying for me. And maybe that be why is explains why it's unconscious and why I feel it that way.
It is unconscious and it is individual circuitry. So it does come in a pulse of knowing.
Mhm.
The rational mind has it's like the rational mind doesn't even know what to do with that. And being split from your throat, there wouldn't be an easy, reliable, consistent way for you to have a way of expressing it, right? Through words
Mhm.
or even actions. So what you've described matches really well with what we see here in your design. Yes, it is unconscious. However, it is a knowing exactly that because of that individual circuitry. So thank you for sharing that because yeah, it captures it really well.
Yes, I've listened. I mean, other projectors have talked about how they get a hit or they feel it somewhere in the body. But one of the things I never thought of was, oh, maybe it's because it's conscious for them.
Exactly. That is so interesting to know the difference, to see, is it conscious for them? Is it not conscious? Because that gives us a whole different quality of access to our authority, right? Yeah, sounds so powerful. And your only other activation for your splenic center is the 44, and that's also unconscious. It's a very unconscious place in a very deeply intuitive, instinctual center, which doesn't generally use like rational thoughts to communicate.
Yes, and the split explains why it's like half of me is like up in the air and the other half is like down in the ground. And it's hard to bridge both.
You're absolutely right. You've said it so beautifully. It is hard to bridge both, and the root is rooting you right
Mm.
at your absolute base. And you do have a lot of energy going on around your root center, right? We can see the 41, which is your personality sun. You've got the 60, which is your north node on your personality side. You got the 54, which is unconscious, and that is your Saturn. Your 38, we talked about multiple activations there. And then that 58, which is unconscious in your Uranus. So a whole lot of stuff going on in this center, right? All that fuel for life.
Yes. which makes me feel like I could be a generator.
That makes sense. And who knows how often you run into someone with the third gate,
Yes.
right?
Hmm.
Creating that activation, that connection for gate 60, which would give you access to that sacral energy, however inconsistently or unreliably that would be, right?
Hmm.
Um, all right. Let's see. Oh, I think the only, not the only, there's so many ways to go, but one of the things that might be fun is to take a look at your conscious moon. Now, the influence of the moon is here, it's going to be the focus and the drive that you may experience in life. And for you, it is gate 51, which is your only activation in the heart center. Gate 51 is called the arousing, the gate of shock. It's the ability to respond to disorder and shock through recognition and adaptation. It's a fifth line gate for you, and that name there is symmetry. And again, because you don't have either the planet in the exaltation or the detriment, it may be possible that you might experience either version of this. So the perfection of the warrior ego through instinctive adaptation, or the egoism to indulge in victory and lose vigilance. So again, lots of words that I know. So let's just start with the gate of shock aspect of this, right? This moon energy in you, the fifth line energy is also very much about people projecting on you. People project onto fifth lines, and they generally project that they're either going to be the savior or the heretic, burn them at the stake kind of thing. So be curious to know, do you have any observations of your own life where perhaps people have projected upon you in a way that's either shocking to you or you've been shocking to them, and it's created maybe some disorder? And yeah, anything you might notice about that.
Yeah, I feel like I've experienced many times this energy. It's happened mostly with my relationships, right? For example, it's just always some of my relationships have always kind of ended out of nowhere, and it's a shock.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's just like, what happened? It's everything was working out beautifully, or so I thought. And then out of nowhere is like the shock of we're no longer together, or even friendships. It's they come in, it's we get along very well. Out of nowhere, we just lose touch. It's almost like we never talked before.
That
And
is
I,
shocking change, isn't it? When you've been really close to someone and suddenly they don't even recognize your existence anymore, kind of thing. Is that right? What you're saying?
yes.
Yeah, I mean that is very shocking, right?
But even like just experiences throughout my life, I've run into many experiences where it's just a normal day, and out of nowhere, like something like you're saying might be projected onto me, and it's like a shock out of nowhere.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, that's a wonderful awareness to carry forward. Is this is natural for your design? I,
It's
I
like,
mean, and then there's
I don't want any more shocks. Like,
the good news is it's normal for you, and the bad news is it's normal for you, right? Uh, and my sense is that it's never that you're going to not feel shocked. It may be only that often when things happen that we don't feel good about, our first instinct is to like, oh, I don't even want to look at that. Or then we start obviously explaining to ourselves what we did wrong or what they did wrong or blah, blah, blah. So if now that you have experienced even more expansion around your awareness of this part of your design and know that it is a pretty driving force in your life, think of the power the moon has on the oceans. It moves them, right? It's like moving the whole planet
mhm,
away. So that's the kind of thing. This is moving your inner tides, okay? And so there will always be an ebb and a flow of shock in your life. And it does say here that your warrior ego, which is a beautiful thing, there's the possibility of perfection through instinctive adaptation, which
mhm,
you're also built for, right? You're a splenic authority and you're a third line in your profile. And part of your splenic definition has third line. So, like, instinctive adaptation is like your middle name, right?
Yeah. And now that I know it, I'm aware of it. I'm like, okay, when's the next chalk? When is
Exactly.
the next one coming?
Right. And so, I mean, we all spend time chattering to ourselves about things we could have done differently. But for you, you have full permission to never do that again if you don't want to.
Yeah.
All right. Is there any other part of your chart you would like to share some thoughts about with us?
I think it's the only other thing that I will ask, or maybe we did look at the gate one, did we?
We did not look at your gate one, and
Mhm.
that is your unconscious Pluto. Tell me about your gate one for you.
It's the gate of self-expression, but it is unconscious.
Mhm.
And I have a very hard time expressing myself. And I find it even more confusing because I have all this energy. And then, yeah, I can release it by exercise or even like walking or just physical exercise. But sometimes I want to talk. But being a projector, I can't just go and start a conversation with anyone because I might not be recognized and I need to feel invited. So it's been really hard, not just in that sense, but also to like even express myself.
And it's again a fifth line, that gate for you. And again, that fifth line is always going to attract projections from others that will
Mhm.
either be very pleasant and positive or unpleasant and negative. And you don't actually have to do anything to make that difference. It's the other person's projection upon you. And so this fifth line has the energy to attract society. So again, it's attracting, right? Society and these projections from others. You don't have either the exaltation or the detriment. So you may sometimes, because this whole channel is about creativity and contribution as an inspiring creative role model. So you often may feel the power and drive to stay with the creative process, or you might experience eccentricity that, though attractive, might limit your drive.
Mhm.
Right? For, I would assume, manifesting inspiration without limitation, because the whole gate is described as creation as a primal force, the energy potential to manifest inspiration without limitation. So that gate does want to manifest inspiration without limitation. It wants to get that up to the throat without anybody or any energy stopping it.
Mhm.
However, you're describing that you feel the need for it to attract the recognition and invitation in order for it to be correct for you to share. You potentially here might consider looking at some sort of creative process that you may turn to in those moments. I don't know, are there any particular creative outlets that you already enjoy?
No, not at the moment.
Okay, wonderful. Perhaps consider experimenting with some creative processes, particularly because you're saying this, you want this to be expression. The first thought that arises for me is perhaps this is a place where you could begin writing, right? Or
Mhm.
if it's more comfortable or feels like it has more energy for you, turn on your notes app on your phone and just voice record and voice dictate, right?
Mhm.
Particularly because you do have the throat connection here with that 1333, but again, mostly unconscious. And so the one is in an individual channel. So that individual channel, it's going to come up in a pulse or it's going to be gone in a pulse, right? So you're going to suddenly feel this, oh, I got to talk. I got to get this out, right? And that's going to rise and or emerge and disappear on its own. It may be helpful again to just give yourself the outlet for a place to put that expression. These days, like a blog, a YouTube channel, certainly your own journal would be great too, right? And as far as like a blog or a YouTube channel, it's completely correct for you to show up as according to your authority and in partnership with your design to communicate, right? You're not forcing anyone to listen. A lot of the people who might come across it are going to be generators. They have the choice to respond, right? Another projector might recognize something in themselves in what they're hearing in you, and then they will give their focused and absorbing attention to what you're saying. So I'm curious how that lands for you, that kind of idea.
Yeah, no, that is ringing a bell because I do feel not that I do automatic writing or things like that, but I went into a few months ago. I really craved like the writing and just things will come out of me and I'll just start writing them. And then I'll go back and look at it and I'm like, wow, that's really good. I need to share this or I need to post this. But I never actually did that.
And that makes total sense because your throat and G center definition is isolated from your splenic authority and your root energy there, right? You also have the 43, the gate of insight, in your conscious Pluto. So for achievement to be maintained, a new order must be fairly established. The new order might be you communicating your insights through this creative pulse, which again, the 43 is in an individual channel. It's going to come in a pulse, these insights. And so the order that may be established might be that you have a blog or YouTube channel and maybe you don't even share it. You let the world find it if it's correct for the world to find it, kind of thing. Like you don't have to put pressure on yourself to prove or
Mhm.
achieve in that way. So with the Pluto, you have a line 2, which is called dedication, unique mental habits and thought processes which promote insights. So Pluto is our lifelong learning. It's the truth and transformation. It's finding light in the darkness. It does take a lifetime. And so it's not, it makes complete sense that for you, this is kind of a driving feeling of both of your Plutos are about expression in their own way. The 43 is unique insights. And you can see here, it's pointing at the throat. You don't have the 23 activated, but that 43 wants so badly to get those insights. And 43 is all about like unique and kind of almost weird insights sometimes, right? It's
Yeah.
what no one ever thought of, right?
Yeah.
So that's going to want to get out to your throat. And then on the other end, you've got this unconscious Pluto. So you've got your two Plutos like going in the throat, like, let's get this stuff out. And yet, I really want to encourage you to give yourself loads of grace because this is your lifetime's work. So you can start anytime. You can start now, you can start later. But the truth is that it's going to be over your lifetime that the transformation that's available to you through these two gates will emerge into your life.
Okay. Yeah. No, thank you for that. That rings a bell because yeah, I have been thinking about just like how do I want to express myself? Because I also don't want to push it. As a projector, we want to wait for the invitation. But the way you explain it, or just maybe start even posting these things on the blog, as long as I know it's at a place where anyone who needs to see it or read it will and can, and I'm not there for with any expectation of growing or getting the attention. It's more of getting it out there, getting it out of my system.
Absolutely. Letting your light shine in the world, letting your voice have a place where it feels like it's got a home in no way contradicts being a projector and waiting for recognition and invitation. And by giving your creative expression and your unique insights a first line, like a platform, a secure foundation, a place to go, then you can do the third line experimentation with it. And you just see
Mhm.
how it goes, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And you already have the definition between the 1333 from your G center to your throat. Again, mostly unconscious, but it's called the channel of the prodigal, a design of a witness. And it really is so very much about it's in the collective abstract circuitry. So it's going to be in cycles and it's about sensing. This one is about the 13 is called the listener. Here, I'll open it up. The gate of the listener, the fellowship of man, universal ideas and values in an ordered framework which inspires humanistic cooperation. So lots of words there, but the experience that I have of this, because I also have this gate unconscious with this exact line,
Mhm.
line 2, bigotry. And I also have the 43. I have the full 4323. So I have unique insights that pop out of nowhere, right? And they want to be expressed. And there's also the capacity for me to kind of gather up these universal ideas and values, put them in some sort of ordered framework, whatever that means. And through doing so, I may inspire humanistic cooperation, right?
Mhm.
But it's up to the people to find it for whom it's correct.
Yes.
It's making sense of the past, of our stories from the past, and finding out that life does have meaning and that, in fact, it all does make sense in the end.
It all does make sense at the end.
Right? Yeah, I know. And look, your 33 is both your conscious and unconscious Jupiter. Jupiter is the law we're here to live by. Jupiter is a big influence in our solar system. It is a big influence in our internal solar system. Look at this. It's gate 33, retreat, the gate of privacy. The subtitle is active withdrawal and the transformation of a weak position into a strength. So here's where you may find that, sure, it may appear that your capacity for expressing or manifesting your expression might be a weak position, but active withdrawal, where you go by yourself and you either dictate or record audio, or you write, that's the active withdrawal that will transform what may feel like a weak position because you don't have a conscious definition to your throat and you don't have it from the 43 or the 1, which your Plutos are kind of like pushing on you to.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Okay, I discovered something.
Hey, awesome. Love it. Love it.
Thank
Well,
you.
that is the purpose of the Human Design Projector Society and podcast is, you know, I recognize you through opening up the various elements on the Maya mechanics. I offer not just an invitation to you, but also I can offer maybe some sense of how it lands for me or what I'm hearing or feeling or sensing, or even my own experience of it if I have the same activation or definition. And then you get to recognize yourself by connecting what I recognize here, and then you recognize it in yourself, and that deepens your awareness. And as projectors, we all learn more about ourselves through the other. So we're also contributing to that.
Absolutely. I mean, in no way I would have been able to see that in myself.
This has been so lovely. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for going on this adventure. For
Telling stories.
exactly.
That's shocking.
Shining your light, appropriately delegating responsibility, right? You are taking the responsibility for sharing your experience. I'm taking the responsibility for opening up and guiding places for you to see yourself and share with us. So thank you for all of that. And yeah, I look forward to more.
Yeah, thank you, Zette. Again, I appreciate the space that you're creating. And I mean, this is amazing. I'm sure a lot of projectors will benefit from having just even listening to this podcast, and someone else who has the same gates will feel recognized and they will understand more about themselves. And if they're having the same issue or the same concerns, now they can what's it called, acknowledge that and see themselves in that. So I'm sure
Absolutely.
we're all so uniquely, but at the same time, we're so connected.
So
Thank
true.
you.
For sure. All the unique elements, we all share a lot of these elements, but the way they come together with the planets and the lines and the exaltations and the detriments and the definition and the consciousness and unconscious, I mean, it's pretty extraordinary how diverse the community of humans are. And projectors, we are the most complex because we do have that capacity for different authorities, so many different authorities, and differences in openness and all of those other elements. Yeah, and that we as projectors, we're most kind of lit up by exploring the other person, right?
Ew. Yes, we
Yeah,
do.
So we get lit up more by paying attention to the other. So it's really, I think, actually quite a risk and very courageous for projectors to explore themselves in this context because naturally we want to focus on the other because that's just how we're made.
Yes.
I acknowledge you for that risk and for that courage.
Thank you, Zed. And again, thank you for seeing me.
You're welcome, and you are seen. And yeah, your design is extraordinary. There's so many other places I would love to dive in. So perhaps we can do it again.
Absolutely. Thanks again.